Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. What should Europe's response be if US President-elect Donald Trump decides to cut Ukraine's funding and military aid? Well, this is a question on the minds of many, especially in this region, and was one of the topics discussed on Wednesday in Warsaw by Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte. The Polish position on any resolution is clear. During the discussions, Prime Minister Tusk said, and I quote, "Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine." Well, to discuss the possible repercussions of President-elect Trump's decision on Ukraine, we're joined by Monika Sus. She's Associate Professor at the Polish Academy of Sciences. Professor, welcome to TVP World and thank you for taking the time.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Now, Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary-General, said, and I'd just like to read a quote from him, "We have to make sure that defence aid will keep flowing to Ukraine and that we're able to get them from a position where they're losing territory to stabilise and then winning back from the Russians what they have lost." Now, a noble ambition, but a little bit far-fetched, wouldn't you say, at the moment?
Definitely far-fetched at the moment. I don't really think that Europe is ready yet for a transition in the White House. The only problem is that we have to be ready and we have to get ready fast, and we have exactly, 2.5 months to basically put our heads together and start supporting Ukraine even stronger than we have been supporting Ukraine so far. But there is a long way ahead of us, of course.
Of course there is. Now, you say that we only have 2.5 months, which is, of course, true, because that's when President Trump is confirmed. But this should not be news to us, should it? I mean, President Trump's been saying this since 2016.
Well, not only President Trump, right? It was actually Barack Obama for the first time who said that Europe should actually start acting as a stronger geopolitical actor. So yes, definitely, that's not a news for us. And we should have been doing this for, a long time by now. But of course, I mean, if we haven't been forced to do it, and we haven't been forced to do it, then the situation was different. Now the situation has changed. And I think that we've been seeing this since at least February 2022, that many more European countries, I mean by that European NATO allies, are started to take, security much more seriously with, for example, increasing defense spending. So this is definitely a much welcome news, but we have to keep doing that and we can't stop now. And we basically have to, not even spend more money on defense, but also spend it in a more coordinated way.
Indeed. Well, talking about spending in a coordinated way, the US has officially opened, you might have seen on our news bulletin, officially opened a new air defence base in northern Poland. Surely that is a sign of commitment, actual, money spent and a firm base in Poland.
Yes, definitely. That's a good sign for, for basically not only for the eastern flank and not only for Ukraine, but for NATO overall, because it basically means that, as you just said, that the U.S. commitment is stronger. And let's say we hope that it will stay as strong as it is. But of course, I mean, to be totally honest, we really don't know what will happen after Trump takes the power, and we can only assume that he will, try to end the conflict in Ukraine. And I think that in the absolute Polish interest, but also in the overall interest of NATO allies, it is, of course, also to end the conflict in Ukraine, but on Ukrainian terms. So basically, we have now time to strengthen Ukraine as much as possible in order for Ukraine to be ready to enter peace talks, but from the position of strength. That's the issue here.
Indeed. So, I mean, basically, there is no doubt that Poland has certainly done as much as possible in support of Ukraine, both nationally and internationally on the world stage. Mark Rutte said, and I quote, "Poland makes a significant contribution to the life of the alliance." Surely what Mark Rutte is saying is more countries should be behaving like Poland. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, Mark Rutte, who just took over the position of Secretary General of NATO after Jens Stoltenberg basically stepped back after many, many years, has been rooting through European capitals since a couple of weeks. He's been to Berlin, for example, and to Italy. And of course, he is talking to allies and saying that they should spend more on defense. But we also know how the politics looks like of that. And I mean, especially talking about Germany, with basically government collapsing and with the new day and with a date for the new elections just being set, it will be difficult for Germany to increase defense spending. But of course, there is also, I would say, we can also see the glass half full, that the new German government would actually increase its support for Ukraine. But definitely, I totally agree with you. Poland is absolutely the prime example of countries spending money on defense, but many more NATO allies should increase their budgets.
Okay, now, one of the things that Trump has been saying consistently has been, well, you know, our hands are really tied. We're focused much more on the Pacific Chinese threat. And Europe should look after its own affairs. Now, Kaja Kallas, who's the European Union's incoming foreign policy chief, had this to say. She said, if America is worried about China, they should first be worried about Russia. She was referring, of course, to Chinese support for Russia and the fact that China is probably watching very carefully how America responds to Ukraine, and they will use that knowledge in the Pacific. What would you say to Madam Kallas?
Well, I mean, Madam Kallas is definitely right, but I think that the situation is complex because it's not only about China, right? I mean, we see North Korea and Iran also stepping up their support for Russia. So, I mean, of course, you know, the world is watching. Not only China is watching, the world is watching how US, but also how Europe handles Ukraine. And on that, I would actually agree also with Mark Rutte, because he, when he was in Warsaw, he was talking to the Prime Minister and to our President, and he also said that NATO should be much more careful what is actually happening in Indo-Pacific, and we should also, you know, not only focus. I mean, obviously Ukraine is the priority, but we see how tangled the picture is with North Korea, China, and Iran supporting Russia here. So we have to also take care about our allies in the Indo-Pacific, like, you know, Australia, Korea, New Zealand, and actually make sure that they are on our side and they support us in this conflict, but not only in this conflict, also overall as allies.
Indeed. Now, that sounds to me like a lot of investment in the military, but, you know, across Europe, actually, and other countries. Now, Poland, again, seems to be leading the way in terms of the amount that it's investing in military equipment. How would you assess the preparedness of other European countries in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there has been a lot of talk at the EU about preparedness, about civil defense as well. We had several reports published recently by the European Union leaders, not by officials, but for example, former president of Finland. And I think that the common thread there is really that Europe should get more prepared in many different dimensions. So it's not only about spending money, as we just discussed, but also about integrating defense industries. I think the most important word here is really interoperability. So we won't be having one type of tank, obviously, but we should make sure that our militaries are able to cooperate and interoperate with each other. So that's something that Europe is about to do. And the big question mark for the new European Commission and for the new, Kaja Kallas as well, of course, as a major part of it, is how to find money to, for example, incentivize joint procurement among the member states. And that's something that the EU and the member states obviously will have to answer in the next coming weeks or months perhaps, but it has to be really, the ball has started to be rolling very soon on that.
Indeed. I mean, in this period of economic stagnation in some areas, finding the money is going to be adding to the challenge. Now, on Wednesday, President-elect Trump met with President Biden, and President Biden has continually supported the supply of equipment to Ukraine. What do you think was said in that meeting about Ukraine?
Well, it's really hard to guess, right? I mean, the only thing we know for sure about Trump is that he's unpredictable. But I think, obviously, that, them meeting is obviously a part of, political culture. That is a very good manifestation of it, I would say. And I mean, overall, of course, we are expecting from Trump that he will continue, at least to some extent, the major political lines, foreign political lines of Joe Biden. Because we have to really differentiate between Trump campaigning and, promising things like he will end the war within one day, within one call, basically, to Vladimir Putin, and then him stepping in as a president. And, he will have a very strong mandate, as we saw with the election results. But there is also a very strong part of the Republican Party who would like to continue for the U.S. to support Ukraine. And this is basically something that I think not only Ukraine, but also Europe still continues to hope.
Indeed. Well, we should be watching, of course, very closely. And as you say, quite difficult to predict what the president will do when he is in office. Thank you very much, Professor, for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Don't go away. Lots more coming up. Bye-bye.